I'm Marie-Louise McHugh. I was born in Switzerland quite a while ago to a wonderful family. I lived and was educated there until I was 28 years old, after which time I left. I came to the United States to get married to my present husband, Peter McHugh, and settled in the Albany area. And I've stayed here ever since. I love where I live here. We are kind of in the woods, but still close to a city, which is essential for me. Well, I always wanted to express myself with images. Came much easier than writing or composing music of what other artists do. Um, I did take classes in painting to learn the basics again, and to many I wanted to do painting, oil painting, and that I needed a little refresher thing. It starts with the image, whatever image I have in my head, and then I call that gestation. Every image that I think about is not immediately, put on paper, and on it has to kind of mature in my brain, or then I have to think of, is that going to be a large picture, a small picture, a medium picture? What kind of format is that going to be on? I always prepare my surfaces or canvases. I paint mostly on canvas, stretch canvas. I always prepare them ahead of time because I think that just either the linen, you have to gesso it. We put that white stuff on it to make it stiff and um, waterproof or oil proof. I also like texture, so I apply some colored gesso and then I dab it so that it creates a more rough surface that allows me afterwards to have more paint on it. It looks thicker and richer, and it's something that I have done for years now, and it's a habit I have. Then, use charcoal to outline what I do, and very quickly, this goes very quickly. I can do that in no time, because when you put the image on canvas, you get it it looks back at you and says, what? It's very exhilarating to say, oh, I'm going to do this. I was always pear shaped. As girls, you always talk about what's your shape and whatever, and I was always a pear shape. And the funny thing is that I like the pear, whether one had anything to do with the other, I have no idea. But it happened to be a fruit that is equated to the shape of a body. And as I said before, I love figurative work. I love the figure. And so in that way, yes, it kind of fits into something that I respond to. I mean, do I look like a pear? Maybe, I don't know. I used to, maybe more, but now I don't know. But it has the pear and the woman's body, they have some kind of similarities, I would say. I needed some models for exercises, and I had some pears on my red counter at home, and I looked good. So I started painting that and repeating the form, and I really kind of flipped because this was something I could use almost as little people, pairs hugging or leaning against each other, or just having some kind of attitude. I associate it with emotions and with acting, with all kind of shapes that I can give it to say something. And I always use the stem. The stems do great things if you want them to, you know. It doesn't have to be so dramatic. It can just be subtle. I love to pick up a small canvas and just paint a pear. And it's just soothing. It's a known quantity, and it's just wonderful to go back like to an old friend, you know, the pear, instead of struggling with some other stuff. To this day, I go to the market, for instance, and I see pears with a great stem on it. So I put it carefully in my basket. I go to the cashier and I say, be careful, you know, and they look at me sideways and they don't understand why, because I said, just don't break the stem. And they go, oh, please. I bring it home and I draw it. It's beautiful. I'll never get tired of it. I feel very fortunate. I had a wonderful teacher who wouldn't let me paint until I had a lot of paint on my palette, all kind of different mixes. And it got to be some kind of a process that I have now, that I love the creaminess of the paint to start out. You know, first of all, to just the act of mixing gobs of paint. I have a big palette. It's actually a table. And I just mix a lot of paint always ahead of time before I start, so that I have the material to paint. It's like a mason needs to do enough cement, because you don't want to run out of that particular mix that you love in the middle of the process and then you're stuck. I realized that this was part of the pleasure on my palette, to just prepare paints ahead of time. I know what I need, and just mixing them and looking at these beautiful streaks of colors. And what I call blocking the whole painting is set up all the elements that I want in my painting with about the color I would like, an idea of the color I would like. And then I can also move things around at that point. I can make lots of changes at that point. And then I start really the painting process of a painting, which is, you know, choosing the colors and deciding how I want things to look. Anything organic has a quality that resonates for me, just like having a figure, especially a female figure. It's wonderful to paint because there is an organic quality to it. But the pear has something more that I discovered, and I love it. Starting in school, we had to do all kind of exercises on the canvas. They would give us homework to do a landscape or to do this or that. And I realized very early on that my great pleasure was to look at something organic and then try to enhance it or just to reproduce it. I just found my voice in them, and I immediately embarked on to even turning trees into lollipops and all kind of funny round shapes. 80% of your time spent on painting for me is creating the proper painting. You know, not proper painting, that's the wrong thing, but solving all the problems that I created in 5 minutes by throwing everything on the canvas. And once this is done, you have the greatest joy to finish your painting. Once you know where you're going, what you want to stay on the painting or what you want to add to the painting. When I start putting, you know, the true paint on my canvas, I work really hard at creating a three-dimensional image. and that takes time. I have to kind of model my shapes. I want them to be voluptuous sometimes. I want them to be thin sometimes, more flat, you know. So you have to create this illusion on a two on a flat surface. You really want to create the illusion of three-dimensional forms. So this takes a little doing, and sometimes it's frustrating because it doesn't work the way you want. But and you have to create a space that's believable, you know, two forms that have to be in the same space, or one in the back or one in the front. So you have to work with all the techniques that you learn in school and you apply there to create these illusions. I finally settled in a studio that was a pretty good size and allowed me to surround myself with a lot of things that I enjoy. Masks, I collect masks. When I work in my studio, which is a good size, but sometimes with my big paintings, I do not get enough space to step back and see the image in a more neutral setting. I mean, it's in the setting that's so ingrained in my eye that sometimes I lose track of what is really there. So what I do, I have a mirror that I can move around, and I look in the mirror, and as you know, it inverts the image, and believe me, you can things jump at you that you were not even aware of, and that is gives me a way to correct certain things in my paintings um, easily, because they are so different that, you know, I can easily see what other people might see with a fresh eye. I create a mood also with music so that I'm happy painting and not frustrated, not too frustrated, because believe me, you get frustrated. And I also try to paint several paintings at the same time, because you need, when you create an image, especially something visual, you have to rest your mind or your eyes to come back to it later and look at it a little more, you know, with a little more distance. Because I can paint for several hours on a painting, go out, come back an hour later and says, what was I thinking? You know, all of a sudden I see, what is this color? Or what is this? This does not work. I couldn't see it. So you have to rest your eye, and you have to get some distance between that image that you were working on. As a young woman, I was always interested in the arts. I lived um, among some artists that were not in the family, but they were friends, and I was really passionate then about all kind of art too. But through my schooling, I encountered teachers who were dead bent on teaching me abstract minimalism, which is totally foreign to my soul. I am a gushy, very representational artist. I love high emotion, lots of color. And I was quite discouraged by this cerebral look at art. So I switched gears and I started doing photography, because this was a medium where I could capture an image and nobody could tell me that it should be looking different. And I did photography for quite a while. Beside other things, I was involved in with music and musicians, and so because I was busy working, I was not making a career at photography, but I used it for collages and some other small works I was creating at the time. I might see something all of a sudden that I don't like. For instance, in my two pair paintings or pair paintings, all of a sudden I just realized that the stems were not what I wanted them to be. They didn't convey the message that I wanted to convey, or at least they didn't have the form that was pleasant to me. And so I sometimes it's difficult to change certain things, but you just have to scratch it out, start over, or and I do that quite a bit. Um, but this comes after a while when you let a painting sit and you have a time to look at it. I even took some paintings home after having them in an exhibit, and I just changed things because the colors just didn't come out, or the shape was just a little off, and I fixed it and it looked better. The problems can be the composition, can be the color, can be the atmosphere or whatever, you know, the coolness, or the it's too warm, not enough depth. But it can also be the quality of your paint application, you know. You might have left some stuff underneath and it keeps showing through, not just the color, but the brush strokes you didn't like. So you just scrape, you know. I mean, you really work on the canvas to get things where you want, and to move, you can move a whole thing, you know. Say if it was over like 3 inches, it would be perfect. So it's tough job sometimes to do it, but you do, you know. Once I fix the painting, um, of course that takes a little time too, but at some point the painting talks back to me and tells me, wow, this, you know, it's really exciting. As much as I can suffer through the middle of the work in my paintings, all of a sudden you have this eureka moment where you say, wow, yes, this is what I wanted. And it usually comes without warning. All of a sudden you see it and it's there, and you know that it was worth the pain. I never know. When I put a painting in a show, I never know whether I'm going to see the painting again. And it's really funny because it's like my kids, you know, I put them on something and then whoops, somebody might take one home, which is great. And I am not that attached to the physical thing of a painting. I'm glad it goes to a nice place. Here it's in storage. You know, once it's done, it goes into storage or on my walls if I have room. Um, but it's not shown, so I like to have them out. The point is to show it and to share it with people, whether they're going to take it home or not. It's nice to have that moment where you can show what you've been doing. Believe me, I have times when I wonder, you know, why am I doing that? You know, they're all piled up here. I'd rather have somebody see them. And of course, you know, I get into shows and I can show the paintings. Um, when people buy them, it makes me happy to know that it's going to be on somebody's wall. And it's fun for an artist to hear people see what comes across from a painting, you know, what they see in that painting. I want to bring joy to people. I want them to look at a Pear painting and smile, you know, and say, wow, you know, this looks good.